Here we are in section 4.5, and this is the last section for chapter 4, so I hope you enjoy. We have inequalities here, and realize that inequalities simply means that it's either above or below something, greater than or less than. That's all that it amounts to. And so we begin with really one of the easiest ways to determine whether or not it's greater than or less than, and that is by looking at the graph. And if we look at the graph for number 1, we are asking where is g of x greater than or equal to f of x? And whenever we ask this question, we are asking the x values. We are only interested in the x values because the y values tell us where it's greater than or less than. So what we're interested in is the x values. Now if we look at g of x is that straight line. F of x is the parabola. So we are asking where's the straight line above the parabola? Well, that starts at negative 1, 1 and goes till 2, 7, but it never that's the only place where the straight line is above, has higher y values than the parabola. And so we know it's going to happen between negative 1 and 2 because we're only interested in the x values. Now the question is, do we put the brackets or the parentheses? Well, in this case, since it's greater than or equal to, we put brackets. If it were just greater than, then we would put parentheses. Now the next 3 problems asks us to solve the inequality, and there truly is the easiest way to do this is to get everything to one side and 0 to the other. So in the case of number 2, we already have it in that fashion because there's the problem. X squared minus 9x is greater than or equal to 0. Then what we're going to do is we're going to factor this side over here. So this becomes x times x minus 9. Now what we do is we actually set this equal to 0 and then find what are the critical points. Where does something happen? So we let x equal 0 and x minus 9 equal 0, so that x equals 0 or x equals 9. Those are the important places where things happen. So what I'm going to do then is put any value on a number line and mark those. Then what we need to do is we need to pick a value that would fall down here, somewhere in here. So let's take negative 1 and let's plug that into right here. If we plug in negative 1, this whole thing is would become positive because this would be 1 plus 9. So it becomes positive. So I'm just going to put a positive in that little spot there. Pick a number between 0 and 9. 1. If we plug in just 1 here, it becomes 1 minus 9 or negative. Plug in a 10. 10 squared is 100. 100 minus 90 is 10, so that it's positive. And a lot of times what will happen is this will alternate positive, negative, positive, but not always. So you can't just automatically do that. But then the question is, where is that greater than or equal to 0? In other words, where is this positive? Well, it's positive and it could exactly equal 0, so that means we're going to use brackets instead. It's positive from here and it's positive all the way here. So it goes from negative infinity all the way up to 0. It does include the value of 0, and then it starts right back up at 9 and goes on forever to infinity. Examples 3 and 4 are the same thing, except 3, we start out with x squared minus 64 is greater than 0. So what I want to do is I want to get everything to one side and get 0 on the other. That's already there. Then factor this. This is x plus 8, x minus 8, and set that equal to 0, so that the two very important points that occur here is x equals 8 and x equals negative 8. And so I'm going to, on a number line, put those values, negative 8 and 8. So I need to pick a value out here, say negative 10. Negative 10, that would be 100. 100 minus 64 is positive. Pick a value here. 0 is a nice one. 0 minus 64, that's negative. And pick a value out here, positive 10. Would be 100 minus 64 or positive. And we are asked, where is it greater than 0? We don't have the equal to, so that means we're not going to use any brackets. We're just going to use parentheses. But what's going to happen is everything down here is positive, everything up here is positive. Just the stuff in between here is not. So that means we're going to go from negative infinity all the way up to negative 8. But we can't include the value of negative 8. Then we start just above 8 and go all the way to infinity. Now, example 4. Example 4 has a slight bit of a problem. So let's start with where we begin and then go from there. Now the first thing we need to do is get everything to one side and 0 to the other, and that's the big difference here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute this 36, and then we're going to subtract 65x. And so we are to the point where we can actually do something here. Now, the way to factor this, after using tic-tac-toe method or whatever, we get 4x minus 9 times 9x plus 4. And we're going to set that equal to 0. So 4x minus 9 equals 0, so that 4x equals 9, or x equals 9/4. Likewise, 9x plus 4 equals 0, so 9x will equal negative 4, or x will equal negative 4/9. And so I need to set, it'll be negative 4/9 here and 9/4 here. So picking a value down here, negative 1, and we put it into this one right here, the one that compares to 0. That's the one we need to plug it into. So negative 1 would be 36 plus 65 minus 36. Well, that's all positive. So we put a positive there. A good value to choose here, luckily, is 0. 0 minus 0 minus 36, well, that's negative. And then if I were gambling, I'd say this is positive, but let's check. Let's put in 3. 36 times 9 is 200, almost, well, 300 something. Minus 180, 190 something, minus 36 something, it's still going to be positive. And so we want to know, when is it positive? So it's positive all the way down here and all the way up here. So it's going to go from negative infinity up to negative 4/9. It does not include that because we don't have equal to. And it's going to start back up at 9/4 and go to infinity in that fashion.